be honest with you, Roboquest is a game that surprised me, even if I knew what I was getting into. Shovelwaring them aside, I already see a lot of potential here, and knowing that I spent over 20 hours on this game, I feel like now would be a good time to talk about it. So let's do just that. By the way, while I was gathering footage, the first major update dropped, which is why you may see some differences between clips, so keep that in mind. Not to mention, I don't play roguelikes, so I can't exactly judge how well this game plays as one. Well, aside from saying that I like what's here. Oh yeah, I might as well tell you what Roboquest is in the first place. This is indeed a roguelike FPS, but there's really more here than meets the eye. Get it? Because Transformers? Robots? In disguise? Okay. First impressions here are pretty solid. Everything has this cool comic book style going on, and there's even a bit of that mid-2000s to early 2010s Cartoon Network vibe here. Or maybe that's just me. Okay, let's move on to the good stuff. If you haven't already noticed by now, there's plenty of movement to go around, and if anything, it's pretty reassuring to see all of these indie projects taking a stab at these so-called movement shooters. But that's another tangent for another day. Despite being in early access, the movement here already feels incredibly smooth. A lot of it may be fairly standard, such as your double jump and air control, but if anything, more games need these sort of things. It's also nice to see this movement encouraged in game through different means. Enemies tend to drop resources which leads to push forward combat a la Doom, and most of them have a visible charge of animation, so it's important to recognize these animations in order to dodge in time. I just love the slide here. I do wish that it preserved momentum a little bit more at the end, but right now it's no big deal as there's still polishing to do. I could see a lot of use out of having different upgrades in the future. There's just something about tailoring a game's moveset to your needs that I feel has a lot of potential here. We already have items like the boots and jetpack, and while I'm not feeling the jetpack, I can say that I'm a big fan of the boots. I find that you can utilize the extra height to open up some strategies, like reaching an advantageous position. That or they can be used for some cool combos. I would really like to see more of these optional perks playing a role in movement, as I feel that would help to diversify the movement system here while not overcomplicating things. Perhaps this could all play into a lot of customization when that's fleshed out. However, I could do without the sprint, as I feel like it's too redundant. I guess it's nice for clearing that extra bit of distance, which is why I still use it, but personally just upping the base walking speed would probably feel better. I mean, if games like Doom, Quake, or even classic Halo got away with no sprint, then why not this one? Movement aside, what will be a shooter without the shooting? Well, already there's a good amount of variety to be had here. Sure, you have your pistols, assault rifles, and shotguns, but on the other side of the coin you're getting miniguns, turrets, and
frickin' laser beams attached to their heads!
Also, when you have a weapon that's called the Unreal Gun, you know what kind of games these developers are taking inspiration from, and that makes me so happy. So already we got something promising going on, but how well do these weapons work? Well, gunplay is actually pretty good. Few models and particles have some nice animations to them, and there's even a stagger system for where you do enough damage. So visually things are pretty nice, but the sound could use some help. I understand that it's likely that these sounds are still being worked on, but as it stands, a lot of these weapons sound flat, with some guns having that pew-pew aesthetic to them. You know the one. I suppose it all fits in with the look of everything else, but simply put, I'd still say this makes weapons feel worse than they need to be. Though to be fair, some guns do fare better than others. That isn't to say the sandbox is lacking, as I found that a lot of these guns are actually pretty useful, with certain weapons contributing something unique to whatever builds I had. Though I kinda wish that I didn't need to use up an artifact slot in order to experiment more. Again, maybe that's just me. Oh wait, I almost forgot about reloading. Surprisingly enough, I do like how it's handled here. Not only are the reload times quick for most weapons, but they can be reloaded while holstered. If anything, I would say this further encourages weapon switching above all else. I might as go as far to say that this might be the best compromise between including reloading or not. Who knows? I already hinted at the combat loop, but how does it actually play out? Well, maps do complement movement pretty well, with an overall mix of heights and open spaces to keep you going. All in all, it's pretty basic stuff, with not a ton of variety right now, but that's perfectly fine. and each area still plays differently from the last. I'm just hoping that as the game progresses, areas just don't get tighter and tighter. I'm all up for a challenge, but I've already noticed this in the fields and ruins. I can see this becoming an issue later on, but I'll get to that shortly. I do want to touch on the final area. Well, what's currently final anyway. The energy center has a lot of stuns, and sure, they're easily avoidable. I'm just hoping that subsequent levels later on don't go overboard with this design. That being impeding the combat loop and labeling that as a challenge, with movement being the main target in this case. We already saw this to an extent in the fields and ruins, but here it's more direct. I'd rather be challenged to make the most out of my kit rather than to potentially have that same kit be attacked head on. Again, this isn't much of an issue currently, but I can see this sort of progression being detrimental. Aside from all that, Roboquest is already a really good experience, and I figured that it'll only get better from here on out, as right now, it's clear that we're just getting started. And in case Rise Up Studios somehow manages to see this, I think the game is great, and I very much look forward to what's in store. I made this one of my go-to games at this point, and if any of you are already interested, feel free to grab this off the Steam store while it's in early access. Now remember, this is early access, and a recent release at that, so expect a relatively loud amount of content, and optimization isn't the best. Otherwise, I'd say keep sticking with this one. And until then, see ya.